So we get to the crux of the matter. It's a long way to get to this part of the journey. But if you just contemplate on it, that when you understand what imprinting is a dysfunctional definition of the vibrational that is placed in the emotional, that is passed from generation to generation to generation by two people coming together, attracted to each other because of their mutual imprints, and then having a child, and then passing that imprint on to the next generation. So when two people come together and they have a child, that is the portal through which love, the way that love is expressed in the world, is continued. Right? And what we normally do is we come together and have children and then work out our stuff on our children. Right? So there is a new paradigm of operating as far as this, and this part of the talk, working with the companion, is not work everyone is going to do. But at the moment, the people that do enter that level of the work will be bringing in a paradigm that doesn't exist on this planet. It's a very new paradigm. It's been here before. Others have modeled it to us before. We just can't recognize it because we can't see it through the lens of our own experience. We can only recognize something when we see it, when we've had the experience ourselves. So this experience has happened on the planet before in very isolated ways, but we wouldn't recognize it even if we saw it. So let's look at the definition of love. By the time we are 7 years old, our definition of what love is already installed. And until we impact it consciously with our awareness, it doesn't change, no matter what our adult definition of love may be. Because our adult definition of love is equally warped, right? Our adult definition of love is based on what we call romance, and the program unleashed when we enter romance, because it unleashes an equally unconscious program. But that program will lead us to our unconscious definition of love always. What do I mean by that? If a child grows up in a family and when it asks for love, it gets that, that will have impacted the emotional body with a particular emotional signature, whether it's a signature that will combine fear, anger, and grief. That signature will become that child's definition of what love is, the child's definition, not the adult's. And when that person grows up and becomes an adult and then enters the adult definition of love, which is romance, wine, marriage, all that stuff, when it enters that experience, it will navigate that experience towards this. Towards not necessarily this, but the emotional signature related to it. And you can see this, for example, if someone is in a relationship in which they are being physically abused or abused in some way, and you ask them, why don't you leave? They'll say, no, but they love me. They really love me. I know they really love me. And what they're really saying is the emotional signature that I feel as a consequence of abuse is actually what I equate with love. And what you can do is you can do an intervention on that person and go and take them to a safe house where they're protected. But if you turn your back and leave them to their own will, they will walk straight back into another relationship in which that abuse is there. Because unless they feel the emotional signature underlying the abuse, they don't feel loved. Not that they, the adult, doesn't feel loved, the child doesn't feel loved. Remember, we're told the child is created in the image of God. We don't really get what that means. The child is created in the image of God. In other words, the child is what happens between 0 and 7 years old. The child is the 7-year-old. And the 7-year-old is the emotional body is also another representative for the emotional body, because our emotional body is fully imprinted by the time we're 7. And what this means is, by the time we are 7, whatever definition is in that emotional body, whatever way that energy functions and runs, is what's going to define, is going to create the quality of our experience. The child is created in the image of God. The emotional body is the causal point of the quality of our human experience. It's creating it all the time, the quality of it, according to its definition of love. And that's why you can see, if there's someone who becomes a pedophile, it's not because they're a bad person. If you take that person back to their childhood, you go back to their childhood, you will find there was some weird sexual stuff going on with that child, or around that child, and they were imprinted with that signature. And unless they go into that behavior as an adult and feel the consequences of it, which is the emotional signature, they don't feel loved. And so in the world at the moment, there is no justice. There's no justice in the world. Because we don't know how to resolve our own fear, anger, and grief, what we do is people who reflect it to us, we put them away in prison. Prison is not justice, it's revenge. Right? It's revenge. You don't help anyone by putting them in prison, but of course, as human beings, when we actually can't even help ourselves, right, we'll try and lock anything away that we don't know what to do with. That's the way we are. So there's two things going on. There's the unconscious definition of love. And we all have the unconscious definition of love. And this we share with our family. We share with our family, right? It'll run through our family. That's what makes us family. That's what makes us cling to a particular group of souls, is we share this unconscious definition of love. And that's the one definition of love. Then we have another definition of love, which is a programmed definition, really, of how to acquire love, right? So we have this idea that's so deeply ingrained in us of how to acquire love, that the moment, you see, once we move through puberty, what happens during puberty is this energy is switched on in us, the most powerful force in the universe. If you think about the sexual energy, it is the most powerful force in the universe. It's the creative principle. Life is God having sex, right? Your conception is an orgasm. Think about it. It's a starting point of everything, right? Everyone wants to get back to that point, right? Everyone's looking for the source, right? So the sexual energy is very powerful. And that energy switches on at puberty. It's like a switch goes on. And so we're either going to go into addiction because of it, or we're going to go into abstinence because of it. We go into two paths. Either we become celibate because we can't handle it, or we go into complete addiction and use it to fulfill our needs and wants. But it's not really what it's there for, right? Well, we don't know how to deal with it in this world, but we think that it's got something to do with love, right? And it does. It does. It has something to do with the vibrational. It has something to do with the vibrational. But what happens is when it's switched on in us, what we've done is we've created a program to kind of try and control it. Whether we've done this, whether it's happened consciously to humanity or it's unfolded unconsciously, doesn't matter. The fact is, there is a program. And the program is so deliberate that you can watch anyone run it the moment they get switched onto it. And it begins when you fall in love, right? So, because of our unconscious definition of love, because we are unable to give our emotional body is in such a state, we are unable to give ourselves emotionally what we require. We grow up needing it from others, right? And this is where the vampire mythology comes from. All human beings are vampires. We just don't know it. And what a vampire is a being that lives in the darkness of ignorance and believes that it gets its nutrition from others. In other words, I don't feel good unless you tell me I feel good. I don't feel liked unless you like me. I don't feel validated unless you validate me. I must get my emotional nutrition from someone else, and I will bite you to get it, right? I will, and so it's the same with the vampire. When a vampire, you become a vampire by being bitten, and the biting process is the imprinting process. So when a child is exposed to the behavior of the adult, it becomes a vampire too. Because the adult is also getting its needs and wants from others, its emotional needs and wants, believing that it comes from outside of itself. The idea that my sustenance comes from outside of myself comes out of ignorance. That's the darkness in which I live, right? And a vampire can't go into the light. It can't live in the light. It will die if it goes into the light. That's why you can't tell someone who lives in victim and victim mentality that they are responsible for their experiences. They find it offensive. It's an insult. How can you say I'm responsible for my experience? Because they're living in the darkness. They can't go into the light. It would be death to actually look at the fact that I could be responsible. But how do you kill a vampire? Right? You take a wooden stake and you drive it into the heart. Because if I come along and I drive a stake into your heart, you can be sure that all your attention will go into the heart center. And the moment you put your attention into this place, whatever the illusion is going to show itself. The illusion that it's the emotional imprinting that's running your life, not the world. And once that illusion is seen, the vampire is dead. Once you learn how to nourish yourself, your own heart, the vampire is dead. That you no longer lead other people to validate your life for it to be valid. Right? So the death of the vampire comes from doing the heart work. That's what that metaphor is about. But until we do that, we are like vampires. And the way a vampire is we're leaning over, looking for someone to lean on. Well, consistently, we move through life leaning over like this. And the moment we bump into someone who's leaning in the equal and opposite direction, right? We come along and we find someone else, oh, that's so comfortable. That's so good. Ah, will you marry me? Right? It's called falling in love, right? And what it is, and you know, because the moment you find someone that you can lean on, you start to intimidate them. It's called dating or intimidating, right? And you intimidate them until they'll do what you tell them, which is you marry me, right? And you'll notice the mental body asks for the marriage. No, the mental body has to ask. The emotional body has to submit. Will you marry me? Yes, I will. Right. And once that happens, right, then there's a whole program that unfolds, this marriage program. And the emotional body, or the woman's side of it, or the feminine side of it, has already been pre-programmed. In this world, a woman is pre-programmed from the time she's young. A little doll is put in her hands. You are going to be a breeder. Here's your first thing, right? Feeling unhappy? I have a child. Right? It's a program, right? And then you also see, Walt Disney and everything with the prince and everything. And so the marriage day is all what it's all about. There is no life after marriage, and there is no life before marriage. It's all about getting married, having the dress, having the bridesmaids, having everything wonderful, right? I've got to get married, because if I don't get married, there's something wrong with me. And if I do get married, I will live happily ever after, right? So it's programmed. It's an absolute drive, right? And once the marriage happens, the marriage is great because everyone's there going, yeah, getting drunk and having fun, right? And then everybody leaves, and you move into the same bedroom. Same bed, right? Live in the same room. When you haven't yet even gained an awareness of your own beingness, now you're thrust into the beingness of somebody else, right? And eventually, very soon, you wake up and go, who the hell is this person? Right? Because they stop behaving well after they get married to you. Right? The good behavior is the intimidation. That's what it is, right? And if someone will take over the room and decorate it and everything, and eventually you wake up and go, where the hell am I? I mean, nothing of this reflects me, right? And from that moment onwards, one starts to seek space. Because space is grace. And when you're lying in someone else's emotional body every night, you are not having a good rest. There's no ways that you can truly rest in someone else's emotional signature, let alone having to lie in your own emotional signature. Now you've got someone else's emotional signature. And that's why 90% of divorce is from lack of sleep. Your Honor, I can't sleep. Divorce granted. I get it, right? And there's this desire to have space, so you start pushing away from each other because there's no sense of space, because you, right? That's why they invented golf. I'm going to go and walk for miles and miles and hit a ball into a hole just so I can get some space, right? And the thing about marriage is, marriage has got nothing to do with intimacy. If you want to be intimate with a person, the last thing you want to do is marry them, right? If you really love someone, don't marry them. But if you are married to someone, you can wake up from it inside of it. All is not lost, right? Because actually, you have to go through this experience. It's like when you hear about being upset, you can only relate to how important it is, the part of being upset is because you've been upset before. You've watched yourself go manic. You've watched yourself lose your temper and feel like an idiot afterwards. You've watched yourself go into insane behavior and achieve nothing from it. If you hadn't have gone through those experiences, you wouldn't realize what being upset is about. It's the same with marriage. When you see what marriage really is, marriage serves politics, commerce, and religion. It doesn't serve you or the person you're intimate with. It has no benefit but to show you the program. And when the marriage doesn't work and you're not getting on with each other and you don't know what to do, well, let's just pop out a few kids. Maybe that'll help things out, right? And then what happens is most of us have children because we're not doing our inner child work. So we pop one out so we can work on it out there, right? We do our outer child work with our children. And that's just, and it's all happening unconsciously to us. Marriage is an unconscious program in that manner, right? And it shows us, everyone who's been married knows that you get to a point where you go, what the hell is going on here, right? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. Because marriage doesn't lead to intimacy. It doesn't. But it can. You can wake up in it and go, hang on, this is not where we were heading. This is a program. And it really is a program as much as any software computer program. And it's a billion-dollar empire. Makes a lot of people rich, but it doesn't actually help with intimacy unless you start waking up in it. And if you wake up in a marriage and your partner chooses to stay asleep, well, that's your cross to bear, right? It's just like going home to the family for Thanksgiving, right? It's a cross to bear when you wake up in a situation and your partner doesn't want to wake up. They're not going to wake up. And what you choose to do then is that your heart will tell you what to do and how to do it. But it's really always still about what's going on with you. So the intimacy journey is not about marriage. The intimacy journey has nothing to do with romance. It's not about looking for someone to be mommy and daddy for you. Because really, the unconscious marriage program is that. Whenever we lean on someone else and expect of them to fulfill our needs and wants, we turn them into a parental figure. And nobody wants to sleep with their parents. It's not sexy. And so it just dies, right? And then God will come in again as the affair. God is the affair. Coming back and saying, remember what it felt like before you went unconscious? You go, yeah, I want that, right? And go and run off and do that. But then if you have half the chance, you'll turn that into the sleep again. So the intimacy experience is a very different experience, because intimacy is not about, again, it's a dismantling of a relationship. Marriage, the structure of marriage, what marriage is a structure that is built by, around, and to maintain the unconscious definition of love. Because out of that structure comes a child who will maintain, comes children who will maintain the conscious definition of love, just as it was when you were a child. It's a structure that maintains it. All it does, and when you see what it is, it's a structure, because in that structure, all you will do is build a way to keep that unconscious definition of love continuing on. You just pass it on through the generations. Intimacy is about coming together with a person to consciously dismantle this idea that someone else is there for me to lean on emotionally, and that I cannot be that for myself. And someone else will show that to me, but on more of an accurate way. The intimacy journey is about, like the family journey is about realigning of attributes. The intimacy journey is about realignment of the mental and emotional body and the way that they function with each other, because they are back to front in this world. It's a man's world. We live in in other words, it's a mental world. This world is mental. And all the archetypes are backwards and messed up, and they show us what they are. And the intimacy relationship is a means to come and realign this. And what it realigns is really painful to look at. And anyone who does this work, it's the hardest work you will ever do. It's not about romance. It's not about wine and roses. It's got nothing to do with that. That's the program. It'll lead you directly into the program. You enter the intimacy journey with someone consciously, right? Because intimacy is not about the other person. It's about the experience. Marriage is not about an experience. It's about the other person. Who am I going to marry? Let me look for them. Let me find them. And then when you get married, and they reflect, and the reason you're attracted to them is because they reflect your stuff. That's the reason. They reflect your parental stuff that's undealt with. And then what you do is you get married and you try and change that in them, and it's a big mess. Right? So the intimacy is not about the other person. Intimacy is intimacy. It's always about the relationship I'm having with my own heart while I'm with this person, on the journey with this person. And our intent is to look at consciously how we are relating to each other, and where I am controlling and manipulating this person so that I can get what I want. Because the nature of the mental body is, when the mental body goes into dysfunction, it resorts to control. And then what happens is, when the mental body goes into control, the emotional body resorts to sedation. And intimacy is about coming together to realign that journey. So when we enter an intimate journey with somebody, it comes after doing a certain amount of work with ourselves. It's very hard to enter an intimacy journey if I'm still leaning over, and I'm leaning over. And so a place to start is to step back. I always say to people, if they are married and they want to start the intimacy journey, the first step is move out of the bedroom. Get your own bedrooms. Step back. And I promise you, the moment you step back, you're going to start falling over. Because no one's holding you up, right? Emotionally, there's going to be all sorts of stuff that's going to start processing. That's a great process in itself. Have your own bedroom. You step back and fall over and learn to pick yourself up. Because intimacy only begins when I'm standing on my own 2 feet. That's only when I can really authentically enter the journey of intimacy. When I can stand next to somebody like this, and I can rest when I'm with them. I'm not going, lean, right? You do this, I need this. All of that, and to see that, you have to step back so that you can both fall over. That's why I'm saying it's challenging if you're already in a marriage and the other person, not even aware of this stuff. It can be very challenging. But if you're both in the marriage already, one of the ways is just move into separate rooms. That's going to trigger all sorts of stuff. Immediately it's going to come up, emotional stuff, right? There are other techniques too for intimacy, which we'll go further to in the book, but the object of intimacy is to stand together, right? The thing about, let's look at the archetypes. Because intimacy is really about a man becoming a man and a woman becoming a woman, or an emotional body becoming an emotional body and the mental body becoming the mental body. Because in this world, we don't know what it means to be a man or to be a woman. We don't. There are no archetypes that show us what this means. The archetypes that we have are all misleading, right? For example, our religions show us archetypes, and we can look at like some of the archetypes we have at the moment. Let's look at like the Christian archetypes, because they're very self-evident, right? In Christianity, we have the mother, which is Mary, Mother Mary. We have the brother, which is Jesus. We have the father, which can be Joseph or God, right? So we don't have the sister. The sister has been eliminated. We don't have the emotional body in Christianity. In fact, in Christianity, the emotional body is the source of all sin and is regarded as the prostitute. The emotional body is Mary Magdalene. And the last thing anyone in Orthodox Christianity would have you want you to believe is that Mary Magdalene is the causal point of the quality of the experience. But she is, right? But you have to find that out in yourself first. So we have another figure too. So we've got Joseph, we've got God, we've got Mary Magdalene, we've got Jesus, we've got Mary, the mother, and we've got another figure which we have as an archetype, which is okay, that's our other archetype, right? That's the other male archetype, right? So we used to have another one, which was the witches, but we burnt all of them. So they don't have a problem anymore, right? So the archetypes reveal to us what's available to us and the way we behave. Because it's not, you see, if you're physically transfixed, you perceive that this is being imposed on us. It's not. It's reflecting how we are, right? In this world, what is a man? A man can either be a really nice guy who's attached to his mother, right? He just doesn't have any balls and he's attached to his mother, right? No, doesn't. Or he can be like Joseph, who was in the back doing carpentry while the conception took place. He wasn't even involved, right? Or he can be the devil, the bad guy, right? Those are your archetypes. You take your pick. Take your pick. And then women have archetypes too. And if you're a woman in this world, you can be a mother, which you train from childhood, give you the doll and train you to be the mother. Or you can be the prostitute. You don't really have another choice. Or you can behave like one of these male archetypes. You can wear a suit and be hard and tough and controlling and be a devil and get somewhere in business. But mostly you can be a prostitute or a mother. And take a look at the world. Most of advertising is using women as prostitutes to sell products. Otherwise you're a mother, right? And what men will do is they will want you to be one of those two. Either you be the prostitute or the mother, right? And I'll turn you into the mother and then I'll go and look for the prostitute again, right? These are our archetypes, right? Or you can be God who's just not available. Unless you go to the priest, he might be able to put you in touch. But otherwise he's not available to you, right? So these are the archetypes that are available to us. But this has got nothing to do with what a man and a woman is. Nothing to do with what a man and a woman is. These archetypes come out of this controlling. And you'll see, when we're in trouble, where do we believe we have to go for our salvation? To the mental body, to the teacher, to the brother, Jesus. That's what he's saying. It's your salvation. Jesus will save you. The mental body will save you. And you can also pray to Mary, the mother. People do a lot of praying to Mary, the mother. In other words, the physical and the mental world are your savior. But don't go anywhere near the emotional. She's the source of weakness. She's a prostitute. She'll lead you astray. Be very afraid of going there. Don't go there. And that's the psyche. That psyche, even if you're not part of that religion, even if you're a Hindu, even if you're a Jew, This psyche has been imposed upon the planet. It's so powerful. This is the psyche of the Western world. When people say, I want to be like America, that's what they're saying. If I want to be modern, I want to be a capitalist, that's what they're saying. These are the options that I would like to follow. And when people enter the Western world and modernize themselves, these are the archetypes they start to fulfill. But this has nothing to do with what a man and a woman is, and absolutely nothing whatsoever. So the intimacy journey is this. When you go together with someone and say, consciously, and you say, let's find out what it is to be a man and a woman. What does that mean in this world? What does it mean to be a woman? What is a woman? A very difficult question to answer if you don't include prostitute, mother. What is a woman? What is a man? Right? If we don't include our roles. And so entering this journey is a chance to take a look at this. Because what's happened is, in a world run by the mental body, it's a world of destination. It's a destination world when it's run by the mental body. It's control. It is, I want to know what the outcome is. I want to know what I'm going to get out of doing this. I want to know when this finishes. I want to know how long this takes. What am I going to make out of it? In other words, where is the orgasm? The world of the mental body is the world in which the only destination is the orgasm. Everything else is irrelevant. As long as I get my orgasm, I'm happy. And you are only here to give me my orgasm. Whether my orgasm is earning $50,000 a month, or buying a brand new car every time I want one, or getting you see, the amazing thing that we have to look at, when we do the intimacy work, there's some very difficult stuff to look at. And that's why you can't really enter intimacy work with another until you have established this aspect of your experience and awareness of it. You must have established to some level an awareness of the vibrational, of your own presence. Your presence that is separate from the experience that is unfolding. In other words, I am not my experience. I'm having an experience. But I'm not the experience. The experience is always changing. What I am always stays the same. And I must, on some experiential level, establish that, which is established through doing this alchemy work. Through doing the alchemy work, the one thing you will be able to feel when you awaken your feeling body is your presence. When you say, I know what I am, it will be through feeling something, not through some understanding. And once you establish that, that's very important, because doing intimacy work with somebody, you are going to be destroying aspects of this. These paradigms, these programs that have been installed in the emotional, mental, and physical world. When we're married to somebody, we don't really have any awareness of this. Our entire awareness is this. And that's why when this breaks down, we get divorced. Because as far as we're concerned, it's over. Because we are the experience. Once our experience isn't working, we walk away from it. Because we're the experience. It's not working. The experience I'm having with you is not working, so I'm leaving you. Because you're the experience. Right? In the intimacy work, it can't be that way, because you are going to look at things that are so deep and intense, and some things that are so hurtful, that your only desire is going to be to stop it, to kill it, to cage it, to run away from it. It's going to be so hurtful to look at, right? And at that time, you want to have the vibrational. For example, my companion and I, we used to say, we don't really do it much more at the moment, but we used to say, I'll see you on the bridge. And the bridge means that what's happening at the moment is so hard for me to look at. It's so hard for me to deal with that I need to just let you know that this physical, mental, emotional aspect is just falling to pieces. But that's not what we are, and that's not where we relate to each other. We relate to each other from this place. So for a while, I just can't be here with you. I can't. I need to let this integrate, right? But it doesn't mean that anything is over, because actually we're relating from this place. So meeting you on the bridge means the water that flows under the bridge is the emotional, mental, and physical. And that's going to chop and change and flow and go through its tides. But the bridge itself never goes away, because it's the vibrational. But you can only have the bridge with somebody else if you've already established it in yourself. If you haven't established that awareness of your presence, there's no ways you can do the intimacy work, because there are some very hurtful things that you will look at. For example, let me speak from a male perspective. If I force myself on a woman so that I can have an orgasm, what's that called? Rape, right? And if I'm caught raping somebody, I can be put in prison. In some countries, I can be sentenced to death. In some countries, it's so intense that the woman can be sentenced to death too, right? However, if I intimidate somebody and I buy them a ring and a house and everything so that I can continue to have my orgasm, what's that called? Energetically, it's still rape. If I manipulate any experience so that I can get an outcome that I want, so that I can fulfill my needs and wants, I'm raping. Energetically, it's called manipulation. That's why the word manipulate, because it's got man and nipple in it, right? And it's set up because the first thing that happens when you're born as a child is that your nipple is shoved in your face, right? And then they wait a while and they take it away forever. And you go like, where is it gone? It's a hell of a setup, right? What do you mean I can't see it anymore? You shoved it in my face for months, right? But the situation is, what the mental body is doing, what the mental body does within all of us, is it manipulates everything so it can get a certain outcome. And what it's manipulating is the emotional body, because its outcome is a feeling. When I manipulate the people around me at my work so that I can earn a certain amount of money through their services, I want that money so I can feel a certain way. It's not about the money. I'm manipulating them so that I can feel a certain way. When I manipulate any situation so that I can get a particular outcome, it is the mental body manipulating the emotional body. And in this world, that's how it works. All religions are based on the man manipulating the woman. Have you not seen how clearly that is? Even some religions say that you can only get through God through a man. You can't speak to God through a woman. Right? And then it's funny too, because in the Islamic religion, they dress the woman up in the burqa, right? Head to toe. And this is how our perceptions are so warped. They dress a woman up head to toe, right? So you can't see her. She's pretty much hidden. And then all the Christians go, that's really crazy behavior, right? But look at the nuns. We dress them up in head to toe too, so you can hardly see them at all. And the difference between seeing a nun as being appropriate and a woman in a burqa or not is just the habit. Sorry, I had to do that one. But you see, and all the time we're manipulating their emotional body, which manifests, remember, that the primary relationship is the one I'm having with myself. So in every man and every woman on this planet, the way we live is we use our mental body to manipulate our emotional body so that we can get certain feelings to fulfill us, right? To go for pleasure and manipulate the emotional body. Advertising is manipulation for pleasure. We manipulate people through advertising. Even politics, all of this is manipulation, right? Whatever we're doing. And so when we come together to do the intimacy work, we come to put an end to that relationship. And it begins with the mental body letting go control. Because until the mental body lets go control, the emotional body will not stop sedating. See, what happens is the mental body is constantly pursuing the emotional body to get the feeling it wants. And because the emotional body is pursued, it's sedating. And the expression of that is, honey, I'd like to have sex now. No, I've got a headache. Right? In other words, I want pleasure. Sorry, I can't. I have a headache. And that is the pursuit and the sedation, the control and the attempted control and the sedation. And the problem is, when the emotional body is sedating the experience, what it really does is it's putting up a block here. And because it's putting up a block here, there is no access for the vibrational into the experience. So it's a catch-22. Because the vibrational flows through the emotional, through the mental, and into the physical. The idea that thought creates is the epitome of the mental body control of this planet. Thought doesn't create anything. Everything that's created is already created. Thought's part of the manufacturing process of an experience, but it doesn't create anything. Nothing new. Right? So, when we come together with another, we're working in realigning this behavior. And one of the places, for example, that it starts is in the sexual experience. So in the intimacy experience, the sexual experience is part of this journey, is a very important part. Because nowhere can you see more clearly where there is manipulation than in the sexual experience. And we're bred to manipulate the sexual experience, to go and get that orgasm, right? And in a partnership of two people, one will be requiring sex and pursuing it, and one will be sedating sex. That's how it'll eventually balance out. After you've been married for a while, together a while, watch. One will pursue, one will sedate. And that's the point at which the realignment of the behavior begins. Because the pursuer is always going to be playing the role of the mental body, and the sedator is always going to be playing a role of the emotional body. And what happens is the pursuer is after the orgasm. It's after manipulating the emotional body so that it can be pleasured. It can get what it wants, and then it can roll over and fall asleep. It'll go through its death that way. So the realignment begins, for example, in the sexual experience, is whoever the pursuer is in the intimacy relationship, whoever it is that's demanding sex, is not allowed to have an orgasm anymore. The orgasm is removed. They can have sex. They're also not allowed to initiate sex. Sex can only be initiated by who's ever playing the emotional body. So the mental body can't initiate sex, nor is the mental body allowed to have an orgasm. And suddenly you're going to start finding out a lot. Suddenly you start finding out a lot. If you can't have your sweets, you start finding out something. If the mental body cannot have an orgasm, it will very quickly ask a question. And the question it will ask is, well, why am I doing this then? And that's a very important question. Why am I doing this? Because what we don't realize is that destination consciousness, or always going for the orgasm, is what kills immortality awareness. It's what kills vibrational awareness. Because there is no destination. There's only a journey. And so once the mental body stops control, and you can't fool somebody that you've stopped controlling, because it's an energetic realization. But when the mental body stops controlling the emotional body, stops trying to control it, and just actually supports the emotional body, gives the emotional body the space, right? What happens is the emotional body stops sedating. But it won't stop sedating until the control is taken away. And when it stops sedating, then the vibrational suddenly comes pouring through the emotional, blesses the mental and the physical. What happens is, standing together like that, Once the mental body stops controlling and the emotional body starts sedating, there is an opening and the chalice is there. And then you will realize in that moment that Holy Communion has got nothing to do with paper thin wafers and some cheap wine. Holy Communion has got nothing to do with that at all. Holy Communion is when two beings come together and allow an awareness of the vibrational to come pouring through into their experience without any conditions placed upon it. Love without condition. Love without condition. And when two beings accomplish that and then have children, you're going to see a very different type of child in the world. When we look at the story of Jesus, for example, and we're told that he was born in a stable because they couldn't afford to stay in the inn. If you buy that one, then probably you buy the rest of it. But when you realize what imprinting is about, you will realize that the last thing, that a divine conception, a virgin birth is when a child is born without any imprinting on the emotional body. There is no imprinted conditions into the emotional body by the parents. That's what a virgin birth is. It means the parents have themselves done the work, have entered the journey of intimacy and cleaned that out of their own emotional body, and they're not passing that on to the child. So the child is born with a vibrational awareness intact. And if you're giving birth to a child like that, the last thing, if you're giving birth to a child, is you want it to be born in an environment around drunkard people in an inn. You don't want the child imprinted. You would rather have that child born around beings that are present, like animals. So you'd have animals around the child because they are present. They're not going to imprint it with any of these programs. And when you understand that about that birth, that doesn't tell you less about the child, but it tells you more about the parents. Of what the work those two beings had to do to bring into this world a child that had no imprinting, a virgin birth. But these things we can't really get until we see it within our own experience. When parents give birth to children that are not being imprinted with this dysfunction that's passed from generation to generation, that's only when love will enter this world as love is, which is the vibrational without any conditions placed upon it. And that's the intent of doing intimacy work with another. It's not about romance, it's not about anything, none of that stuff. It's about realigning this relationship so that the vibrational can enter this world, whether it enters as a child or really as the experience that radiates around those two beings. Because that's what will happen. Once you take those conditions off, watch what happens around you, in the world around you. Right? And once those conditions are taken off, and you no longer have the good story and the bad story, then what's the story you're going to be telling? That's when one's myth awakens. What we're speaking about is the third story. And that's your story to tell. No one can tell you what that is. But to know what that story is, why you're really here, what you're really capable of, what your purpose really is, being in this world, it has nothing to do with this imprinting or fulfilling that imprinting. First detangle the imprinting and then it will reveal itself. It reveals itself. So, that's probably enough, I'd say.
Your brother was right, it's heavy.
It's a happy good ending.
I don't know if we even need to do questions and answers. I think we can just leave it there with that. I think that's enough, to digest. All right. Yeah. So, thank you all for coming. and putting up with me for a day and a bit. All right. And explore the website, because the website's full of this nonsense. All right.
Great, Michael.
Thank you.